love you, but good lord, y'all know how to test us. I feel like this meme perfectly sums up the defaulty to Ferrari right now. I can't help but feel like we need to speak about this team after this past race in Miami. Not the first time I've done a video with this title after the Miami Grand Prix. I did that 2 years ago. Honestly, if I had a nickel for every time I've done a video titled "We need to talk about Ferrari after the Miami Grand Prix," I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. Okay, so first off, I want to talk race management, because good lord Ferrari. If you think about it, Miami just went to show that Ferrari can still sometimes manage races about as well as a non-alcoholic who's never touched a drop of alcohol in their life would manage organizing a piss-up in a brewery. But it didn't take a genius to see or hear that frankly, the happiest Village drivers were on race day was in the Lego cars pre-race. All weekend, actually. Neither driver sounded particularly happy on the radio in the midst of the swap drama. Lewis had the sass out in full force.
Have a tea break while you're at it. Come on.
Ferrari caused a lot of aggro and a lot of mess in a bit to try and get just one mere position, and all they managed to achieve was, well, creating a mess and annoying both of their drivers, and getting a position. And in the aftermath, you have to ask, was it even the right choice to swap them in the first place, or should they have not swapped them and then just left Leclerc with that chance to get Antonelli? And this is where I want to point towards this Twitter thread here by AeroTechVH. I want to go through it all in detail because it's very long, but I will link it below so you can go and read through it all yourself. I do recommend going to give it a read. But essentially, the too long didn't read of it is, the decision to swap perhaps wasn't the right one, and they should have left Leclerc ahead to let him go and catch Antonelli, because he was closing in on him a bit before the swap, and after the swap he was still keeping up with Hamilton, who it became pretty clear pretty quickly didn't hit the pace to catch the man who took a seat in Mercedes. As part of this thread says, Hamilton couldn't pass Leclerc without being let go, even though he had DRS, quicker tyres, and a higher PU mode. This situation is a sign that without DRS, the car behind does not have significant pace advantage. Then of course when they swapped back, Leclerc basically dropped Hamilton and it ended only a second and a half behind Antonelli. Makes you think that, Leclerc had some pace in hand. Leclerc could have, if they'd not swapped in the first place, maybe he could have caught Antonelli. But that's just the TLDR. Again, the thread is linked below. I recommend you to go read it for yourself. Frankly, at All That Glitz summed it up quite nicely in don't cost yourself time by calling a swap that's not supported by data. Ferrari effed up, basically. Arguably, despite Lewis's calls on the radio, perhaps Ferrari should have stayed firm and not swapped. Now, you cannot blame Lewis for wanting to give it a go, for still having that fire in him. It's good he still has that. If he didn't, I would be questioning why he's still racing. He said he won't apologize for it, and he shouldn't, because no driver should ever have to apologize for having that fire in them, that desire to win. But that does not mean that Ferrari should have caved to it. As the thread says, due to Hamilton's pressure, Ferrari succumbed, even though they never did this with Sainz and shouldn't have done it this time either, rightfully. And yeah, I agree, in hindsight they perhaps should have done what they've done in years past when Sainz was after team orders and not caved. But they did cave, they swapped the cars, they made the choices they made, and of course Ferrari in swapping the cars also had to be mindful of Carlos Sainz, who was right there behind them and who they did not want to accidentally let by as well. Brake boosted on Twitter reasoned that point out quite nicely, so I'll just leave that here. That of course does not excuse the management mess Ferrari made in Miami, of course, though regardless of that, it should not and it does not hide or tack away the Ferrari's main problem in Miami, and that was their lack of pace. For starters, qualifying, where yeah, Hamilton was closer to Leclerc than he's been in terms of the timing sheets. Yeah, that's a good point, but then that does lead on to issue 1, which was that Hamilton went out in Q2, and Leclerc barely made it to Q3. He said during Q2 that on the radio that was the best laps he could do. He couldn't go quicker. And now, I'ma be honest, when one of the best qualifiers on the grid is saying that those are the best laps he can do, and the laps in question didn't have any big mistakes and were laps that only put in P8, you know you done fucked up with the car. And that leads me on to my next point. Leclerc in Q3 also only managed to put it P8, even though he didn't, for what I saw, make any big mistakes on his fast laps. The car was just slow. Both of them were qualified by Williams. The frickin' Williams. themselves. A credit to Williams though, they had a great weekend in Miami. And Ferrari really weren't that much better in the race. Again, Leclerc couldn't get past the Williams car for the longest time until later on when the VSE ended and he was able to catch Sainz napping on the restart, which also helped Hamilton get past Sainz too in a brilliant few corners between the Ferraris and the Williams of Sainz. And it also took Hamilton longer than it arguably should have to get past the frickin' Haas car. Now yes, he was on hard tires on a pretty greener track than it maybe could have been at that point of the weekend due to rain, but it just wasn't very good for Ferrari. They've typically been a bit better in the races than in qualifying so far this season. That was a bit of a trend last year as well, but that really wasn't the case in Miami. They were subpar in qualifying, they were subpar in the race. They finished a minute or so behind the McLarens, and now yet the McLaren was a freaking rocket ship last weekend, but still. Like, here's the thing, if Ferrari were rubbish in Miami because they'd sacked off 25 and they'd put their full focus onto 26, I could be okay with that. I could accept that. However, as far as I'm aware, they haven't done that. Yet, anyway. Both Leclerc and Hamilton said after the race that essentially they're not where they want to be. They're in a difficult situation, they've got performance to find, they're in a difficult place. Leclerc said he thinks it's very clear why they're struggling, but he doesn't know if they have the solutions just yet. Way to be optimistic there, Charles. Hamilton, meanwhile, says he thinks they know where they're losing it, as in the performance, and they've got to, improve to make the car better before they can unlock their performance, and that they won't give up and will keep pushing. At least one of them is sounding optimistic. Vasseur, meanwhile, keeps on talking about this potential that's still to be unlocked for the car. But genuine question, is the potential in the room with us? Because he keeps saying it. He's been saying it for a few races, but we keep never seeing it. Perhaps it's something that'll be unlocked with updates, which from what I've seen, I think there's updates coming to Imola or Barcelona, or both, I think. I saw that there was updates coming to both Imola and Barcelona, or maybe they're just bringing to one, or maybe they were gonna bring to Imola, but they're pushing it to Barcelona. I think they're bringing updates to Imola is my point. I think that's what I saw. But for the sake of this season, and for the sake of Vasseur, I hope the potential he keeps speaking about is unlocked with updates, but it also seems like they're kind of banking on the Flexi Wing TD in Barcelona to try and help them close up. Risky business if they're banking on that, but what games it might actually help them close up? McLaren might fall out of favour, Mercedes. We dunna ken what's going to happen with it. Got something to insert here while I'm editing about upgrades and also 26. Gonna throw this in here. It's from autoracer.it. This article just came out this morning, I think. But Ferrari's potential unusable. The simulator says it exists, but the track doesn't. Here's why Vasseur talks about it. It's not purely aerodynamic. The car is simply running with mechanical settings that are inefficient for the race. This is compromising the qualifying. For some reason, the engineers can't get the rear suspension to work as it should. It could be a problem with the anchors or the travel. From what we understand, there is a new suspension in the works that could be combined with the latest big package, but the timing is unknown. So that's something on upgrades. Could be a suspension upgrade coming, but we don't know when. And apparently the hope is that the corrections work as they did a year ago. And just something here on 2026, this article does also say that currently in Maranello there are already two teams, one dedicated 100% to the 768 project in the works, which is of course 2026. So Ferrari are very focused on 26. That's good. I also just want to mention something this article says here about McLaren in Miami. McLaren was untouchable. Even Verstappen had to destroy his first stint to resist in vain. The Miami heat made the MCL 39 more unbeatable than ever. The spectre of a summer domination that would wipe out the competition's motivation looms. Everything depends on the driver's ability to avoid making mistakes. It's that bit about the Miami heat making the MCL 39 more unbeatable than ever. If it was the heat, indeed, of Miami that made the McLaren as unbeatable as it was, and as this kind of indicates with the prospect of a hot European summer season, yeah, this season ain't gonna be as close as we maybe all thought it was gonna be. That's all, back to the video. In all, I just think all with Tifosi got our hopes up way too high for the start of this season and knew we're paying the price. I do tend to keep my own expectations for Ferrari measured. I usually hope for the best, expect the worst, and tack what comes. But I must say, I did expect more for Ferrari this year than what we've seen so far. I think we all did. Season isn't over until it's over, but if they want to get anything good for this year, then they need to act, and they need to do it fast. It is important to not be overly dramatic and not overreact, but with that being kept in mind, it does just have to be said that Ferrari right now are not great. Yeah, there's nothing else to say on it right now, really. And with that, my Ferrari rant is over for today. Complete left of field non-F1 side note before I end this. we're into May, which means one thing. It's Eurovision month. So just out of pure curiosity to those keeping up with it, what's your top 5 Eurovision 2025 songs? For me, it's currently Tutta l'Italia by Garbi Ponte for San Marino in 5th, Serving by Mariana Conte for Malta in 4th, Barabada Bastu by Kaj for Sweden in 3rd, I probably mispronounced something there, Maman by Luan for France in 2nd, and Lighter by Kyle Alessandro for Norway in 1st. I freaking love that song so much. Here's hoping Eurovision is a tad less controversial than it was last year, and here's hoping that the Indy 500 later this month is also a good race. Well, mind you, it normally is. But let me get your thoughts down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.